My husband's mother is forcing him to divorce me because I refuse to give her grandchildren. It started 6 months ago when Janet cornered me in her kitchen during Sunday dinner. She was washing dishes and I was drying them like always. Then she just turned to me and said, "So when are you two finally going to give me a grandbaby?" I told her the truth. We weren't planning on having kids. Ever. Her face went completely white. She dropped the plate she was holding straight into the soapy water. "What do you mean you're not having children?" I explained that my husband Greg and I had talked about it before we even got married. We both agreed. No kids. We wanted to travel, focus on our careers, just be us. Janet didn't say anything else that night, but the next Sunday, she invited Greg's sister Amy and her 3 kids over for dinner too. The whole time she kept pointing at the kids. "Look how precious they are, don't you want this? Greg, don't you want to be a father?" Greg just kept eating his pot roast and avoiding eye contact. Then the phone calls started. Every single day, Janet would call Greg at work. I found out because he started coming home looking exhausted. One night, I checked his phone while he was in the shower. 47 missed calls from Mom in 1 week. The voicemails were all the same thing. "You need to talk sense into your wife. Every woman wants children. She's being selfish. You're running out of time." 2 months ago, Janet showed up at our apartment unannounced. She had a folder with her. Inside were printouts from fertility clinics, adoption agency brochures, even articles about women who changed their minds about kids. She spread them all out on our coffee table like she was presenting a business proposal. "I've done all the research for you. You just need to pick which option works best." I told her to leave. She looked at Greg instead. "Are you really going to let her talk to me like that? I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. The least you can do is give me grandchildren." Greg walked her to the door but didn't say anything to defend me. Last month, Janet stopped pretending to be nice to me completely. She started calling me the problem when talking to Greg's family. At a birthday party for Greg's dad, she announced in front of everyone that I was refusing to give her family a future. Greg's Aunt Susan asked me directly if it was true. I said yes. Half the room went silent. The other half started whispering. Greg's sister Amy pulled me aside later. "Just have 1 kid. It'll make everyone happy. What's the big deal?" I told her it wasn't happening. She shook her head. "You're tearing this family apart." 3 weeks ago, Janet gave Greg an ultimatum. She came over on a Tuesday night without calling first. She sat down on our couch and said, "I've talked to a lawyer. If you divorce her now, you can find someone who actually wants to be a mother. You're 34, you don't have forever." Greg just stared at her. She pulled out actual divorce papers from her purse. "I had these drawn up. You just need to sign them." I laughed because it was so insane. Janet turned to me. "This isn't funny. You're stealing my son's chance to be a father. That's abuse." I told her to get out. She wouldn't move. Greg had to physically walk her to the door, and so she was crying and screaming about how I brainwashed him. Since then, she's called Greg 200 times. She sends him articles about divorce every morning. She told his entire family that I'm the reason she'll never be a grandmother. His dad called last week and said maybe we should consider compromise. When I asked what compromise meant, he said maybe we could have just 1 kid for Janet's sake. Yesterday, Janet showed up at Greg's office. His coworker told me she was there for 2 hours, crying in the parking lot, waiting for him to leave work. When he finally came out, she got on her knees in front of his car and begged him to leave me. This morning, Greg got a text from his sister. Janet is planning an intervention. This Friday, at her house. She's invited the whole family. The message said, "We're going to save Greg from making the biggest mistake of his life." Greg showed me his phone. The group chat has 43 messages. I was about to say something when Greg's face crumpled. He put his head in his hands. "I need to tell you something." My stomach dropped. He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. 3 months ago, my mom asked me if I wanted kids. I told her the truth. I said yes. I've always wanted them. I just went along with your decision because I thought you'd change your mind eventually. The room started spinning. "What?" He kept talking. "I've been talking to a divorce lawyer for 6 weeks. My mom didn't make me do it. I asked her to help me. She's been coaching me on how to leave you without losing everything in the separation. This whole intervention thing was my idea. And tomorrow morning, you're being served with papers." I just stood there, frozen. My brain couldn't catch up to what my ears were hearing. Greg wiped his face with the back of his hand. He wouldn't look at me anymore. Just stared at the carpet like it was the most interesting thing in the world. "Say something," he said. But I couldn't, because what do you say when your entire marriage just collapsed in 60 seconds? What do you say when the man you've shared a bed with for 7 years admits he's been lying to you the entire time? I remember my mouth opening. Nothing came out, just this weird choking sound. Greg finally looked up. His eyes were red, but there was something else there now. Something cold. "This is exactly why I couldn't tell you. You just shut down. You never want to discuss anything." That snapped me back. "Discuss?" My voice came out higher than I expected. "You want to discuss? You've been planning to divorce me for 6 weeks. You and your mother have been scheming behind my back. And you want to have a discussion?" He stood up from the couch, shoved his hands in his pockets. "I knew you'd react like this." React like what? Like a person who just found out her husband is a liar? See? This is why I couldn't talk to you. Everything is always my fault. Everything is always about what I did wrong. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the audacity was just that unbelievable. Greg, you literally just told me you've been lying about wanting kids for our entire relationship. That's 7 years. 7 years of letting me think we were on the same page, ew. And now you're playing the victim? He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. I'm going to my mom's. We can talk when you've calmed down. Don't you dare walk out that door. He walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. I heard his footsteps in the hallway. The elevator ding. Then nothing. I stood in the middle of our living room for I don't know how long. 5 minutes, maybe 20. The apartment felt different somehow, like I was seeing it for the first time. The couch we'd picked out together at that furniture store in the suburbs. The bookshelf Greg built one weekend when he was feeling handy. The framed photo from our honeymoon in Portugal on the windowsill. All of it suddenly felt fake, like props in a play I didn't know I was performing in. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a text from Janet. Greg just called. I'm so sorry it had to come out this way, but it's for the best. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. I hope you find peace with that. I read it 3 times. Then I threw my phone at the wall so hard the screen cracked. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in the dark, replaying every conversation Greg and I had ever had about kids. Before we got engaged, we'd sat in this very apartment and talked for hours about what we wanted our life to look like. I remembered it so clearly. Pizza boxes on the coffee table, some movie playing in the background that neither of us were watching. I don't want kids, I'd said. I've never wanted them. It's not that I hate children or anything. I just don't feel that pull. That biological clock thing everyone talks about, I don't have it. Greg had nodded. He'd reached over and squeezed my hand. I feel the same way. I've never seen myself as a dad. There's so much I want to do with my life. Travel, build my career, just enjoy being us. I'd been so relieved. So grateful that I'd found someone who understood. Who wasn't going to pressure me or try to change my mind. You're sure? I'd asked. Because I need you to be completely honest with me. If you want kids someday, we need to know that now, before we go any further. He'd looked me right in the eyes. I'm sure. No kids. That's not the life I want. Sitting there in the dark 7 years later, I realized those words meant nothing. He'd told me exactly what I wanted to hear because he thought I'd eventually change. He'd bet our entire marriage on me waking up one day and suddenly wanting babies. And when that didn't happen, he blamed me or I. The next morning, I was still on the couch when someone knocked on the door. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. The process server. A woman in her 20s with a clipboard and a tired expression. She handed me an envelope. Are you Lillian Hartley? I nodded. You've been served? She turned and walked away. Didn't even wait for me to close the door. I stood there holding the envelope. It felt heavier than it should, like it weighed 100 pounds instead of a few ounces of paper. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat down. Opened it slowly. The documents inside were everything Greg had promised. Petition for dissolution of marriage, division of assets, a detailed financial accounting that I knew Janet had helped him put together. But there was something else. Something that made my blood run cold. Attached to the petition was an affidavit, Greg's statement to the court. In it, he claimed that I had deceived him about wanting children, that I had manipulated him into marrying me under false pretenses, that I had caused him severe emotional distress by refusing to discuss family planning and becoming hostile whenever he tried to bring up the topic. None of it was true, not a single word. But there it was, in black and white, with Greg's signature at the bottom. I flipped to the next page. There was a list of witnesses who would testify on Greg's behalf. Janet Hartley, of course. Amy Hartley Morrison, his sister, Donald Hartley, his father, Susan Hartley, the aunt who'd confronted me at the birthday party, 4 members of his family, all prepared to go to court and say I was the villain in this story. I put the papers down. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just a divorce, this was an ambush. A coordinated attack designed to destroy me. I needed help. My first call was to my older sister, Nadine. She picked up on the second ring. Lily, it's 7 in the morning, what's wrong? I told her everything. The confession, the papers, the affidavit full of lies. Nadine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, get dressed. I'm picking you up in an hour. We're going to see my lawyer. You have a lawyer? I have a lawyer for everything. Just be ready. She hung up. I went to take a shower. The hot water helped. Not a lot, but enough to clear my head. I got dressed in actual clothes instead of the pajamas I'd been wearing for almost 24 hours. Put on makeup for the first time in days. Pulled my hair back into a ponytail. By the time Nadine's car pulled up outside my building, I felt almost human. She was waiting by the passenger door when I came out. Nadine is 5 years older than me. Taller, more put together, the kind of person who always has a plan. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. That piece of shit, she said into my hair. I never liked him. You said he was perfect for me at our wedding. I lied. His tie was ugly and his vows were boring. I actually smiled. It felt weird on my face. We drove downtown to a building I'd walked past 100 times but never really noticed. The law offices of Rosenstein and Palmer. Nadine's lawyer was a woman named Corinne Palmer, mid-50s. Gray hair cut short, the kind of face that looked like it had seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. She read through Greg's petition while Nadine and I sat across from her desk. Her expression didn't change once. When she finished, she set the papers down and folded her hands. "Well," she said, "your husband is either very stupid or very confident." "What do you mean?" "This affidavit, the claims he's making, they're easily disproven. Does he have any evidence that you deceived him about wanting children? Any texts, emails, witnesses who heard you say something different?" I shook my head. "We talked about it once before we got engaged. Just the two of us. He agreed with me. He said he didn't want kids either. And he never brought it up again in 7 years of marriage?" "No. Sometimes his mom would make comments, but Greg never said anything to me directly. Not until yesterday." Corinne nodded slowly. "So his entire case rests on his word against yours. And the testimony of his family members, who obviously have a vested interest in supporting him. Is that enough for him to win?" "Win what exactly?" "In most states, you don't need grounds for divorce. If he wants out of the marriage, he's getting out. The question is what he walks away with." She picked up the financial documents. "Let's talk about money. You both work?" "Yes. I'm an accountant at a mid-size firm. Greg works in marketing." "Similar incomes?" "His is a little higher, maybe 15% more than mine." "Any shared debts?" "Mortgage?" "No. We rent our apartment. We have a joint savings account and separate checking accounts. 2 cars, both paid off." Corinne made some notes. "No children. Similar incomes. No major shared assets. This should actually be relatively straightforward. He's not going to get much from you, and you're not going to get much from him. Then why is he doing all this? The affidavit? The witnesses? Why go through all that trouble?" Corinne leaned back in her chair. "Two possibilities. Either his lawyer is inexperienced and thinks this emotional manipulation angle will somehow help his case, or..." She paused. "Or what? Or this isn't really about the divorce. It's about something else. Reputation, maybe. Making sure everyone in his family sees him as the victim. Some people would rather burn everything down than admit they made a mistake." I thought about Janet, her 47 phone calls a week, her folder full of fertility clinic brochures, her screaming at me in my own living room. "His mother," I said. "This is her." "What do you mean?" "Janet has been obsessed with grandchildren since the day Greg and I got engaged. She's never accepted that we weren't having kids. Everything that's happened in the last 6 months, all the pressure, the ultimatums, the intervention, she's been driving all of it." Corinne nodded. "That tracks with what I'm seeing here. This affidavit reads like it was written by someone trying to justify their position to their family, not to a judge." Nadine spoke up for the first time. "So what do we do?" "First, we respond to the petition. We contest every claim in that affidavit. We make it clear that Lillian was honest from day one about not wanting children, and that Greg agreed with her decision." "What about his witnesses?" "Family members have obvious bias. Any competent judge will take their testimony with a grain of salt. What we need is our own evidence." "Like what?" Corinne looked at me. "Think back over your marriage. Were there ever any times when Greg explicitly acknowledged your agreement about children? Text messages, emails, even something casual like a joke he made to friends?" I tried to remember. There had to be something. 7 years of marriage, thousands of conversations. Then it hit me. Our wedding website. "What?" "When we were planning the wedding, we set up one of those wedding websites. You know, for RSVPs and registry information. There was a section where you could write about yourselves as a couple. Greg and I each wrote something." I pulled out my phone, started searching. The website should still be up. We never took it down. It took a few minutes of scrolling through old emails to find the login information. The site was still active. A frozen snapshot of who we'd been 5 years ago. I clicked on the About Us section. There it was, in Greg's own words. "Lily and I bonded over our shared life goals, our love of travel, great food, and lazy Sunday mornings. Neither of us has ever felt the pull toward parenthood, and we're both excited to build a life together that's all about us. No diaper changes, just adventures." I turned my phone to show Corinne. She read it, then she actually smiled. "Well," she said, "that's helpful." I took a screenshot, then 2 more, just to be safe. "Is that enough?" "It's a start. It proves that at the time of your marriage, Greg publicly stated he didn't want children. If he tries to claim you deceived him, we show the court that he said the same thing himself." She made a note on her legal pad. "What else do you have? Any other records of your conversations about this topic?" I thought harder. "We talked to a financial planner a few years ago about retirement savings and investment strategies. I remember she asked if we were planning to have kids because that would affect our financial timeline. And what did Greg say?" "He said no. He said we'd decided not to have children and that we were planning our finances accordingly. Do you know if that meeting was documented? Notes, recordings, anything? I don't know, maybe? She worked for a big company. They might keep records. Corinne nodded. Get me her name and contact information. I'll reach out. We spent another hour going through everything. Every detail of my marriage, every interaction with Janet, every conversation I could remember about kids, careers, our future. By the time we left Corinne's office, I had a plan. Not a great plan, but at least a direction. Step 1, gather evidence. Step 2, build my case. Step 3, don't let Greg and his family destroy me. That night, I went back to the apartment alone. Greg had clearly been there while I was out. His side of the closet was half empty. His toothbrush was gone from the bathroom. The framed photo from our honeymoon was still on the windowsill, but it had been turned face down. He'd left one of his sweatshirts on the bed, the gray one I used to borrow when I was cold. I picked it up and held it for a second. Then I stuffed it in a trash bag with the rest of his forgotten things. I spent the rest of the night going through old emails, old texts, anything that might help my case. It was like archaeological dig through my own marriage. Some of what I found was useful. A text from 3 years ago where Greg complained about his sister's kids being too loud at Thanksgiving. This is why we made the right choice, he'd written. Can you imagine dealing with that every day? Some of it just hurt. Birthday messages, anniversary notes, a picture of us at a concert last summer, both of us grinning like idiots. Who was that person? The one who sent those messages? The one who smiled like that? I didn't know anymore. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Lily, this is Donald, Greg's father. I know things are difficult right now, but I want you to know I never wanted it to happen this way. Janet means well, but she can be intense. If there's any way to work things out, I hope you'll consider it, for Greg's sake. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, your son lied to me for 7 years. Your wife harassed me for 6 months. And you think I should work things out for Greg's sake? I didn't send it. Instead, I screenshotted the message and added it to my evidence folder. Let his father try to play peacemaker. Let him pretend to be the reasonable one. I knew whose side he was really on. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and paperwork. Corinne filed my response to Greg's petition. We contested every claim in his affidavit. We provided the wedding website as evidence, along with the text messages I'd found. The financial planner turned out to be a dead end. Her company had a policy of only keeping records for 3 years, and our meeting had been 4 years ago. But we found other things, a Christmas card from 2 years ago that Greg had signed. To Lily, my perfect partner in this kid-free life. Love, Greg. An email thread with friends planning a group vacation, where Greg had written, count us in. We're always free since we don't have tiny humans to worry about. A voicemail he'd left me after his cousin's baby shower. Just got home from the most exhausting 3 hours of my life. So glad that's not going to be us. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Greg had been clear about not wanting children. He'd said it privately. He'd said it publicly. He'd said it to friends, family, and professionals. Either he'd been lying to everyone for years, or he'd been lying to himself. Either way, his claim that I had deceived him was falling apart. On Friday, the day of Janet's planned intervention, I got a call from Corinne. Good news and bad news, she said. Which do you want first? Good. Greg's lawyer just contacted me. They want to schedule a settlement conference. They're backing off the affidavit claims. What does that mean? It means they know they can't prove you deceived him. The wedding website alone makes that argument ridiculous. They're trying to pivot to a standard no-fault divorce. That was a relief. A small one, but still. What's the bad news? The settlement conference is scheduled for next week. But before that, Janet has apparently decided to go ahead with her intervention anyway. She's telling the whole family that you're refusing to negotiate and that you've poisoned Greg's lawyer against him. I closed my eyes. Of course she is. I'm telling you this because you might get some calls. Family members reaching out. People who've been fed Janet's version of events. Don't engage, don't argue. Just document everything and forward it to me. Okay, Lillian, I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. Just keep your head down and let me handle the legal stuff. She was right. I knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. The calls started that afternoon. First was Greg's cousin Miranda. We'd always gotten along. She'd been at our wedding, danced at the reception, told me she was glad Greg had found someone like me. Lily, I'm just calling to check in. I heard about what's happening and I wanted to see if you're okay. For a second, I let myself hope. Maybe not everyone was against me. Thanks, Miranda. It's been rough. I can imagine. Listen, I know this is a sensitive time, but I really think you should come to Janet's house tonight. Just to talk. Get everything out in the open. My heart sank. Did Janet ask you to call me? A pause. Just long enough to confirm what I already knew. She's worried about you, Lily. We all are. We just want to help you see things more clearly. See what clearly? That your cousin lied to me for 7 years? That your aunt has been harassing me for months? What exactly am I supposed to see more clearly, Miranda? Another pause. Longer this time. I think you're being a little unfair. Greg made a mistake by not being honest sooner, but he was just trying to protect you. He didn't want to hurt you. Protect me? He's divorcing me, Miranda. And he filed a statement in court claiming I deceived him. Does that sound like protection to you? I don't know anything about court stuff. I just know that you're both hurting, and maybe if you just talked… Goodbye, Miranda. I hung up. 2 more calls came that evening. Greg's Aunt Susan, then Janet herself, though I let that one go straight to voicemail. Her message was 3 minutes long. Lots of crying, lots of, I never wanted it to come to this. Lots of, please just come tonight and we can work everything out as a family. I saved the voicemail, sent it to Corinne. That night, instead of attending Janet's intervention, I stayed home and ordered Thai food. Watched a movie I'd been meaning to see for months. Took a bath. It felt rebellious somehow. Doing normal things while they were all gathered at Janet's house, probably talking about how terrible I was. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a group text. It was from Amy. The family meeting is over. We all agree that Lily has been selfish and manipulative. Greg deserves someone who will give him the family he wants. We're supporting him completely. Lily, if you're reading this, I hope you know that you did this to yourself. The text went to at least a dozen people. Some I recognized, some I didn't. I was about to put my phone down when another text came through. This one was from a number I didn't have saved, but the message made it clear who it was. Hi, Lily. This is Brenna, Greg's coworker. We met at the holiday party last year. I probably shouldn't be texting you, but I thought you should know something. Can we meet tomorrow? I stared at the message. Brenna. I remembered her vaguely. Tall, dark hair, worked in Greg's department. What could she possibly have to tell me? I typed back, sure, when and where? She responded with a coffee shop address and a time, 10 a.m. I didn't sleep much that night. The coffee shop was a small place downtown, the kind with exposed brick and too many plants. Brenna was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a laptop in front of her. She looked nervous, kept glancing at the door. Thanks for coming, she said when I sat down. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either. What's this about? She closed her laptop, took a deep breath. Look, I know this is going to sound really strange, but I've been working with Greg for 3 years now. We're not close or anything, but we eat lunch together sometimes. Small talk. You know how it is? I nodded. About 4 months ago, Greg started acting different, coming to work upset, taking long lunch breaks, making a lot of personal calls. Okay, one day I was in the break room and I overheard him on the phone. He was talking to someone and he said he'd finally decided to do it, that he'd been thinking about it for years, but he was finally ready to pull the trigger. My stomach tightened. Pull the trigger on what? I didn't hear everything, but he said something about his mom helping him and about how he just needed to get his ducks in a row before he made the move. So Janet had been involved from the beginning, just like I thought. Is there more? Brenna nodded. A few weeks later, we went out for drinks after work, a bunch of us from the department. Greg got pretty drunk, started talking about his marriage. She paused, looked at me with something like sympathy. He said he'd made a mistake, that he should have been honest from the start, but he thought you'd change. And when you didn't, he felt trapped. I'd heard this already. Greg had told me himself. Is that all? No. Brenna shifted in her seat. He also said something else, something I don't think he meant to say. What? He said his mom had found him someone. A woman from her church. Divorced, 2 kids already. Greg said Janet had been setting them up for months. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Setting them up? While we were still married? Brenna nodded slowly. That's what he said. He was drunk, so I don't know how much of it was true, but yeah, that's what he said. I sat back in my chair. The coffee shop noise faded into static. Janet hadn't just been pushing Greg to leave me. She'd been actively recruiting my replacement. Do you know who this woman is? Her name? He didn't say, just that she was from Janet's church and that his mom thought she'd be perfect. I pulled out my phone, started typing notes. Why are you telling me this? Brenna shrugged. Because it's messed up. What they're doing to you is messed up, and I don't think you deserve it. She gathered her things and stood up. I should go. I don't want anyone to see us together and report back to Greg. Thank you, Brenna. Really. She gave me a small smile. Good luck, Lily. I hope things work out for you. She left. I stayed at the table for another hour, processing. A woman from Janet's church, divorced, 2 kids. Janet hadn't just wanted grandchildren. She'd been planning a complete replacement wife, and Greg had gone along with it. The settlement conference was scheduled for the following Thursday. I spent the days leading up to it gathering more evidence. Corinne had a private investigator look into Janet's church connections. It didn't take long to find what we were looking for. Her name was Wendy Sloan, 36 years old, divorced 2 years ago, 2 daughters, ages 4 and 7. She and Janet had been in the same Bible study group for years. According to social media, Wendy had been posting about a new special friend for the past 3 months. The timeline matched up perfectly. Janet had been introducing Wendy to Greg while he was still sleeping in my bed. Corinne added this to our file. It won't affect the divorce proceedings directly, she said, but it destroys their narrative. They can't claim Greg was just an innocent man who suddenly realized he wanted children. He was actively pursuing a replacement while still married to you. What do we do with it? For now, nothing. We hold it in reserve, but if they try to push their deception story at the conference, we hit back. Thursday came faster than I expected. The conference was held in a neutral location, a conference room at a legal services building downtown. Corinne and I arrived early. Greg and his lawyer showed up 5 minutes late. I hadn't seen Greg since that night in our apartment. He looked different, thinner, tired. His suit didn't fit quite right. He didn't make eye contact with me as he sat down across the table. His lawyer was a man in his 50s with a bushy mustache and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. He introduced himself as Howard Fleming. "Let's get started," Corinne said. "We're here to discuss the terms of the divorce. My client is prepared to agree to a standard division of assets, but she will not accept any characterization of herself as deceptive or manipulative." Howard cleared his throat. "My client has concerns about certain financial decisions made during the marriage. We believe there may have been expenditures that should be accounted for, such as travel expenses. My client's position is that the numerous vacations taken during the marriage represented a disproportionate investment in lifestyle over savings. Had children been part of the equation, those funds might have been allocated differently." I almost laughed. "Are you serious? He's claiming I spent too much money on trips he went on with me?" Corinne held up a hand. "Let me handle this." She turned to Howard. "Your client agreed to every vacation. He planned several of them himself. If you're attempting to claim that my client somehow coerced him into traveling, I'd love to see the evidence." Howard shuffled some papers. "We're not making that claim. We're simply noting that there are financial considerations that should be factored into the settlement." "What considerations exactly?" "Mr. Hartley believes he should receive a larger share of the joint savings account, given that his income was higher during most of the marriage." Corinne smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Mr. Fleming, the income differential was approximately 15%, and my client contributed equally to all household expenses. If anything, she was effectively subsidizing his lifestyle by paying 50% of costs on a lower salary." The back and forth went on for another hour. Greg barely spoke, just sat there, occasionally nodding when his lawyer made a point. At one point, Howard brought up the affidavit again, the claims about deception. "My client stands by his statement that he was misled about the possibility of having children." Corinne pulled out her folder. "Really? Then perhaps you can explain this." She slid a printout across the table. The wedding website. Greg's own words about not wanting children. Howard looked at it. His face tightened. "And this, the text messages. And this, the Christmas card. And this, the cousin's baby shower voicemail. Your client wasn't misled, Mr. Fleming. He lied. He lied to my client, he lied to himself, and now he's lying to the court. And we have 7 years of evidence to prove it." Greg finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes. Shame? Fear? He leaned over and whispered something to Howard. Howard nodded, shuffled his papers. "We'd like to request a brief recess." We took 15 minutes. Corinne and I stepped into the hallway. "They're going to fold," she said. "I can tell. Howard knows they can't win this. So what happens now? They'll come back with a new offer, something closer to a standard split. We evaluate it and decide if it's acceptable." She was right. When we reconvened, Howard had a new proposal. Equal division of assets. No alimony for either party. No further claims of deception or manipulation. Corinne looked at me. "What do you think?" I looked across the table at Greg, the man I'd married, the man I'd shared a life with. "What about the intervention? The family harassment? Janet showing up at our apartment at his office?" Howard cleared his throat. "My client's family members are not party to this proceeding. Their actions are their own. But Greg coordinated with them. He admitted that to my face." Corinne jumped in. "We have documentation of that admission. If necessary, we can pursue additional remedies." Howard looked at Greg. Greg shook his head slightly. "My client is willing to provide a written statement that his family members acted independently and that any future harassment will be addressed by him personally." It wasn't much, but it was something. "Fine," I said. "I'll sign." The paperwork took another hour. Signatures, initials, date stamps. By the time we finished, it was late afternoon. The sun was starting to set. I walked out of that building a single woman. Well, almost. The divorce wouldn't be final for another 90 days. But the hard part was over. Corinne shook my hand in the parking lot. "You did well in there. Kept your composure. Didn't let them get to you. Thanks for everything. Just doing my job." "But Lillian? A word of advice?" "Yeah? Change your locks, block their numbers, and don't let anyone from that family into your life ever again." I nodded, already planning on it. That night, I sat in my apartment alone for the first time in a way that felt permanent. The silence was strange. Not bad, just unfamiliar. I ordered dinner, ate it slowly, watched the city lights through the window. My phone buzzed with a text from Nadine. How did it go? It's over. Standard split, no more deception claims. Good, come for dinner tomorrow. I'm making lasagna. Deal. I put my phone down. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was drowning. The next 90 days were about rebuilding. I found a new apartment, smaller than the one I'd shared with Greg, but it was mine. Just mine. No compromises, no negotiations. I got a cat, a gray tabby from the shelter who'd been there for 6 months because nobody wanted an adult cat. I named her Wednesday. I started seeing a therapist, someone Nadine recommended. We talked about the marriage, the betrayal, the grief of losing not just a husband, but the version of my life I thought I was living. It's like discovering a movie you've been in for years was actually a different genre than you thought, I said during one session. You thought it was a romance, but it was actually a thriller, and you're the only one who didn't know. She nodded, scribbled something in her notes. How does that make you feel? Stupid. Angry? Relieved? Relieved? Yeah, because at least now I know the truth. The not knowing was worse. Slowly, things got easier. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes for messages from Greg's family, stopped looking over my shoulder at the grocery store, stopped dreading every knock at the door. The 90 days passed. The divorce was finalized. I got a certified copy of the decree in the mail. I framed it, hung it in my bathroom where I'd see it every morning. Some people might think that's petty. I called it closure. About 2 weeks after the divorce was final, I ran into someone unexpected. I was at a coffee shop near my new apartment working on my laptop when a woman approached my table. Excuse me, are you Lillian? I looked up. She was maybe mid-30s, brown hair, nervous energy. Yes? I'm Wendy Sloan. I think you know who I am. For a second, I didn't react. Just stared at her. Wendy, the replacement wife, the woman from Janet's church. Can I sit down? She asked. I should have said no. Should have told her to leave. But something in her expression stopped me. She didn't look smug or triumphant. She looked scared. Sure. She sat across from me, folded her hands on the table. I'm not here to cause trouble, I needed to talk to you. About what? About Greg. About everything. She took a deep breath. Janet introduced us about 4 months ago. She told me Greg was separated, that his wife had left him because she was selfish and didn't want to give him children. She said he was heartbroken and looking for someone who could appreciate him. She paused. I believed her. I was lonely. My divorce was hard and my girls needed a father figure. Janet made it sound so perfect. So what happened? We went on a few dates. Greg was fine, pleasant enough, but something always felt off. He never wanted to talk about his marriage, changed the subject whenever I asked. I nodded slowly. Then about a month ago, a friend of mine sent me a link to your case documents. Apparently, they'd been posted on some legal forum as an example of bad faith divorce claims. I felt my face heat up. I hadn't known those were public. When I read them, I realized everything Janet told me was a lie. You didn't leave Greg, he left you. And you weren't selfish. He'd been lying to you for years. She looked down at her hands. I confronted him, asked him why he'd let his mother tell me all those things. You know what he said? What? He said it didn't matter because you were out of the picture now, that I should just focus on our future instead of worrying about his past. She shook her head. That's when I knew. I wasn't a partner to him. I was just another piece in his mother's plan, a broodmare to give her the grandchildren she wanted. So what did you do? I ended it. Told him I couldn't be with someone who'd lied about something so fundamental. He didn't even fight for me, just said fine and walked out. She finally looked up and met my eyes. I'm sorry, Lillian, I didn't know. If I'd known the truth, I never would have. It's okay. I surprised myself by meaning it. You were lied to, just like I was. She nodded, wiped her eyes. I just wanted you to know that not everyone believes their story, that some of us see the truth. Thank you, Wendy. Really. She stood up, started to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Janet called me last week, tried to set me up with someone else from her church, said I was making a mistake by rejecting Greg. Let me guess. Another divorced man looking for a new wife to give him children? Exactly. I hung up on her. She smiled slightly. I think Janet is in for a lot of disappointments. She left. I sat there for a long time thinking, not everyone believed their story. That shouldn't have mattered. The divorce was done. I was free, but it did matter. Because for months, I'd felt like the whole world was against me. Like everyone had chosen sides and I was alone on mine. Now I knew that wasn't true. 6 months after the divorce, I got a message I didn't expect. It was from Greg. Lily, I know I have no right to contact you, but I need to say something. I'm sorry. Not for the divorce. That was probably inevitable. But for how I did it. For lying to you for so long. For letting my mom turn our marriage into a battleground. I read it 3 times. I've been in therapy, trying to figure out why I did what I did, why I couldn't just tell you the truth from the start. I don't have all the answers yet, but I wanted you to know that I know I was wrong. My first instinct was to delete it, but I didn't. Instead, I typed back, "Thank you for saying that. I hope you find what you're looking for." I didn't expect a response, didn't particularly want one, but an hour later he replied, "I have one favor to ask. You don't owe me anything, so feel free to say no. But I'd like to meet in person, just once, to apologize properly, to say the things I should have said a long time ago." I stared at my phone. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect the peace I'd finally found, but another part of me was curious. What did Greg want to say? What would it feel like to see him again? I typed back, "One coffee. That's it." We met at a neutral location, not the coffee shop where I'd talked to Wendy, somewhere neither of us had been before. Greg looked different, better somehow, more present. "Thanks for agreeing to this," he said. "Make it quick. I have somewhere to be." He nodded. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what went wrong, and I realized something. I never respected you." I raised an eyebrow. Not consciously. I didn't think of myself as disrespectful, but looking back, I see it now. Every time I went along with something I didn't agree with, every time I avoided a hard conversation, every time I told you what you wanted to hear instead of the truth. He paused. That wasn't love. That was cowardice. I was so afraid of conflict that I let our entire marriage become a lie. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. When my mom started pressuring me about kids, I should have stood up to her, told her it wasn't her business, defended our choices. But instead, I caved, started questioning whether I'd made a mistake, started blaming you for a decision we'd made together. He shook his head. "That's not fair. And it wasn't your fault. It was mine. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know that the version of me you were married to, the one who said all the right things but did all the wrong ones, that's not who I want to be anymore. I'm working on it. It's hard, but I'm trying." I sat back in my chair. "Greg, I appreciate you saying all this, but it doesn't change anything. We're divorced, we're not getting back together. Whatever you're working through, you need to do that for yourself, not for me. I know, I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to hear it." We sat in silence for a moment, then I stood up. "Goodbye, Greg. I hope you figure things out." He nodded. "Goodbye, Lily. I hope you find someone who deserves you." I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. 1 year after my divorce, I took a vacation by myself, something I'd never done before. I went to Portugal, the same country Greg and I had visited on our honeymoon, but I went to different cities, stayed in different hotels, made different memories. I stood on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean and thought about everything that had happened. The marriage, the betrayal, the divorce, the healing. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was just free. My phone buzzed with a text from Nadine. "How's Portugal?" "Beautiful. Wish you were here. Next time. Bring me back something good." I smiled. 3 days later, I met someone at a small restaurant in Lisbon. His name was Elliot. American, like me, in Portugal for a conference. We got to talking, then we got to dinner, then we got to walking along the waterfront until the sun came up. I told him about my divorce, not all of it, but the basics. He didn't flinch, didn't judge. "Sounds like you've been through a lot," he said. "I have, but I'm okay now." He smiled. "Good, because I'd like to take you out properly when we're both back home." I smiled back. We exchanged numbers. 2 months later, we went on our first real date. A year after that, we moved in together. I never asked him if he wanted children, but he told me anyway. "I had a vasectomy at 25, he said one night, out of nowhere. Never wanted kids, never felt that desire. Is that going to be a problem?" I laughed so hard I almost cried. "No," I said. "That's not going to be a problem at all." His mother's name was Claudia. She was lovely. She never asked about grandchildren, not once. Sometimes I still think about Janet, about Greg, about that whole family who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their plans. I don't hate them anymore. I just feel nothing. And that, I've learned, is the best kind of freedom. The end. Update 1. It's been 2 years since I wrote my original post about Janet and Greg. 2 years since my world fell apart and I had to rebuild it from scratch. Some of you have been asking for updates, so here I am. There's a lot to cover. Let me start with what happened to Greg. About 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I heard through the grapevine that he'd gotten engaged. To someone new. Not Wendy, the woman from Janet's church. Someone else entirely. Her name was Vivian. She worked at his company, marketing coordinator in a different department. According to mutual acquaintances, they'd been dating for about 4 months before he proposed, which, if you do the math, means they started seeing each other pretty much immediately after our settlement conference. Part of me wondered if she'd been in the picture even longer, if Greg had been cultivating his exit strategy with her while we were still married. But I didn't have proof, and honestly, I didn't want to dig. I'd spent enough of my life investigating Greg Hartley's lies. I was done. The engagement was announced with all the usual social media fanfare. Fancy dinner, diamond ring, hashtag she said yes. Janet was thrilled, of course. Her Facebook lit up with posts about how happy she was for her son, how he'd finally found his soulmate, how Some things are just meant to be. No mention of me, naturally. No acknowledgement that I'd existed. Just pure revisionist history. At first, I thought I'd feel something. Jealousy, anger, vindication. But I didn't. I just felt tired. Elliot was the one who actually told me about the engagement. We'd been together for about 8 months at that point. He'd seen something online and debated whether to mention it. I wasn't sure if you'd want to know, he said. I don't care anymore, I told him. But thanks for telling me. He squeezed my hand. You sure you're okay? Yeah, I really am. And I was. Because Greg getting engaged didn't change anything about my life. It didn't erase what he'd done. It didn't prove I was wrong. It just meant he'd found his next chapter. Good for him. I had mine. The wedding was about 6 months later. Full church ceremony, 200 guests, reception at some fancy country club. I know this because Amy, Greg's sister, accidentally included me on the mass email about accommodation options. I think it was genuinely an accident. She apologized within minutes and asked me to disregard. But I'd already seen the PDF, the itinerary, the photos of the venue. Janet was hosting the rehearsal dinner. Vivian's parents were handling the ceremony. The wedding party included Greg's cousin Miranda and some guy I didn't recognize as best man. I forwarded the email to Nadine with the caption, "Look what I almost got invited to." She called me immediately, cackling. Are you going to crash it? Please tell me you're going to crash it. Absolutely not. I have better things to do. Like what? Like literally anything else. She laughed. Fair enough, but if you change your mind, I'll be your +1. The wedding happened without incident. At least without incident involving me. But about 2 months later, I got an unexpected message. It was from Brenna, Greg's former coworker, the one who'd warned me about Janet's replacement wife scheme. Hey Lily, long time no talk. Hope you're doing well. I have some news I thought you might want to hear. I called her instead of texting back. What's up? So you know Greg got married, right? Yeah, I heard. Well, guess what? Vivian is pregnant. Already. I felt my eyebrows rise. Already? They've been married like 2 months. Officially, yes, but between you and me, she was already showing at the wedding. The dress had to be altered like 3 times. I did the math in my head. If she was showing at the wedding, she'd gotten pregnant while they were engaged. Possibly even before. Are you saying? I'm saying exactly what you think I'm saying. Janet finally got her grandchild. But it's not quite the timeline she was hoping to post about on Facebook. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All those months of harassment, all those ultimatums and interventions, all that drama about how I was stealing Greg's chance to be a father. And in the end, he'd knocked up his new girlfriend before they even walked down the aisle. How's Janet spinning it? I asked. She's not. Complete radio silence about the pregnancy until it's impossible to hide. My guess is she's mortified. That might be the most satisfying thing I've ever heard. Brenna laughed. I thought you'd appreciate it. Anyway, just wanted to give you the update. Karma's a beautiful thing. We hung up. I sat on my couch with my cat Wednesday and processed. Greg was going to be a father. The thing he'd supposedly always wanted. The thing he'd claimed I'd denied him. But instead of doing it the right way, the way Janet had planned, with a carefully vetted churchwoman and a picture-perfect timeline, he'd done it the messy way. Rushed engagement, shotgun wedding, pregnant bride. I wondered if he was happy. If this was what he'd imagined when he lay awake at night, resenting me for not giving him children. Probably not, but that wasn't my problem anymore. The baby was born about 5 months later. A boy. They named him Theodore. I know this because Janet posted about it incessantly. Pictures, updates, long captions about how blessed she was to finally be a grandmother. She didn't mention that Theodore was born 6 months after the wedding. Didn't acknowledge the timing at all. Just pure grandma joy. I muted her profile after about a week. Not because I was jealous, because I was bored. Around this time, something else happened. Something I hadn't expected. Donald Hartley, Greg's father, reached out to me. Not to apologize for everything that had happened. Not to make amends. To ask for help. His message was strange, formal, almost businesslike. Lillian, I know we didn't part on good terms, and I take responsibility for my role in that, but I'm reaching out because I don't know where else to turn. Janet and I are separating. I need a recommendation for a divorce lawyer. You seem to have had a good one. I read the message 3 times. Donald and Janet, separating. I called Nadine immediately. You're not going to believe this. After I explained, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, well, that's a twist. Should I respond? That's up to you. But personally, I'd want to know what happened. So I did. I wrote back to Donald, gave him Corinne's contact information, and asked what was going on. His response took a few days. When it came, it was longer than I expected. I appreciate your discretion. I know I have no right to ask for your help after everything, but the truth is, Janet's behavior over the past few years has become increasingly difficult to tolerate. The situation with you and Greg was a wake-up call. I watched my wife systematically destroy my son's marriage because she wanted grandchildren. At the time, I went along with it. I told myself she was just being protective, that mothers always want the best for their children. But after the wedding to Vivian, things got worse. Janet became obsessed with the baby, started showing up at their apartment unannounced, criticized everything Vivian did, took over the nursery decorating, insisted on being in the delivery room. Vivian finally snapped and told Janet she needed to back off. Greg sided with his wife. Janet lost it, started accusing Vivian of the same things she'd accused you of, said she was turning Greg against his family, called her another manipulator. That's when I realized it was never about you, Lillian. It was never about who Greg married. It's about Janet needing to control everything. And when she can't control someone, she destroys them. I'm done living like this. I'm done watching her hurt people. I want out. I read Donald's message several times. Part of me felt vindicated. Finally, someone in that family was seeing Janet for who she really was. But another part of me just felt sad. For Donald, for Greg, for Vivian, even for Janet, in a way. All that energy spent trying to control everyone. And in the end, she'd lost them all. I forwarded Donald's message to Corinne, who agreed to take him on as a client. I never spoke to him again after that. About 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine that his divorce was finalized. Janet got the house, Donald got his freedom. The last I heard, she was living alone in that big house where she'd hosted so many Sunday dinners, where she'd cornered me in the kitchen and demanded grandchildren, where she'd spread out her fertility clinic brochures like a battle plan. Now it was just her, rattling around in all those empty rooms. Meanwhile, Greg and Vivian had moved across the state, ostensibly for a job opportunity, but everyone knew it was to get away from Janet. She'd finally gotten her grandchild, and now she wasn't even allowed to see him. Karma really is a beautiful thing. As for me, my life continued to get better. Elliot and I got married 2 years after we met. Small ceremony, courthouse, just us and a few friends. No big wedding, no family drama, no intervention committees, just two people who actually wanted the same things from life, being honest about it from day one. Nadine was my witness. She cried, of course. "I'm so happy for you," she said, hugging me tight. "You deserve this. Thanks for being there. Through all of it. Always." We honeymooned in Greece. Elliot had never been. I showed him all the places Greg and I had never visited. All the experiences I'd been saving for the right person. On our last night, we sat on a balcony overlooking the Aegean Sea. "No regrets?" Elliot asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No regrets," I said. "Everything that happened led me here. To you. To this." He smiled. "Good answer." We watched the sunset together. The last update I had on Greg came about 3 years after our divorce. He and Vivian had a second child, a daughter this time, but things weren't going well. The rumors started trickling through our mutual acquaintances. Arguments, money problems, Vivian posting vague complaints on social media about feeling unsupported. Then came the separation announcement, posted on Facebook, of course, all about growing apart and different priorities, and focusing on co-parenting. Greg was single again, 38 years old, 2 kids, 2 failed marriages. And Janet? Still alone in her empty house, her son too busy with custody schedules to visit, her grandchildren being raised by a woman she'd called another manipulator. I didn't feel smug about it, didn't feel vindicated. I just felt grateful that it wasn't my life anymore. Last month, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. "Hi, Lily, this is Amy, Greg's sister. I know it's been a long time, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I owe you an apology. When everything happened with you and Greg, I took his side, our family's side. I believed the story we were told, that you were selfish, that you'd manipulated my brother, that you'd refused to give him what he needed. But I've spent the last few years watching my mother destroy 2 more relationships. First, my dad's marriage to her, then Greg's marriage to Vivian. Same pattern every time. Control, manipulation, ultimatums. I finally see what you must have seen all along, that this was never about you. It was about her. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I hope you're happy now." I read the email twice. Then I wrote back, "Thank you for saying that, Amy. I'm happy. I hope you find your own way forward too." That was it. Simple and direct. I didn't need her validation, but it was nice to have it. Some stories don't have clean endings. The villains don't always get punished. The victims don't always get vindicated. Sometimes life just moves on, messy and complicated, and you have to find your peace in the middle of it. But my story ended exactly the way it should have. I lost a husband who didn't deserve me. I found one who did. I escaped a family that saw me as an obstacle. I built one that sees me as home. I stopped waiting for other people to decide my worth, and I started deciding it for myself. That's the update. That's where I am now. Happy, whole, free, and not a single regret. Update 2. It's been nearly 4 years since the divorce, and I never thought I'd be writing another update. But something happened last week that I need to get off my chest. Janet Hartley tried to contact me. Not through Greg, not through Amy. Directly. She found my new address somehow. probably through one of those people finder websites. And she showed up at my door. Let me set the scene. It was a Saturday morning. Elliot was out for a run. I was drinking coffee and reading in our living room, enjoying the quiet. The doorbell rang. I assumed it was a package or maybe a neighbor borrowing something. I opened the door, and there she was, Janet, looking older than I remembered. Grayer, thinner, something haunted in her eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other. Then she said, "Can I come in?" I should have said no. Every instinct told me to close the door in her face, but something in her expression made me hesitate. She looked defeated, broken. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She walked into my living room like she was entering a museum, looking around at everything. The furniture, the photos on the wall, Elliot's running shoes by the door. "Nice place," she said. "Different from the apartment. We moved 2 years ago." I know, I've been keeping track. That should have alarmed me, but I was too curious about why she was here. "Sit down," I said. "Tell me what you want." She lowered herself onto our couch, the same motion I'd seen 100 times in her own living room, at those Sunday dinners that felt like a lifetime ago. "I don't know where to start," she said. "How about the beginning?" She was quiet for a long moment, then she started talking. "After Donald left me, I thought Greg would come back. I thought once he saw what his father had done, abandoning his family, he'd realize I was the one who'd always been there for him, the one who sacrificed everything for him." She shook her head, but he didn't. He pulled away even more, blamed me for the divorce, said I'd driven his father away with my controlling behavior. Can you imagine? His own mother. I could imagine, very easily. Then Vivian left him too, and I thought surely now he'll see that I was right all along, that these women he keeps choosing are the problem, that if he'd just listened to me. She trailed off. "But he didn't come back?" I asked. "No, he blames me for that too. Says I poisoned his relationship with Vivian, that my interference drove her away." The irony was almost too thick to bear. Janet had spent years blaming me for everything wrong in Greg's life. Now she was experiencing what it felt like to be on the receiving end. "Why are you telling me this?" She looked up, her eyes were wet. "Because I think I owe you an apology." I waited. "When you married Greg, I was so happy. I thought you were perfect, smart, successful, the kind of woman who would give my son a good life. But then you didn't want children, and something inside me broke. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't understand how any woman wouldn't want what I wanted, what I'd built my whole life around." She wiped her eyes. "I was so focused on what I thought Greg needed that I never stopped to ask what he actually wanted, what you actually wanted. I just assumed I knew best, that if I pushed hard enough, everyone would eventually see I was right. And instead, you lost everyone." She nodded. "Everyone. My husband, my son, my relationship with my grandchildren. Amy barely speaks to me anymore. She says I need therapy before she'll let me back in her life. Do you? Do I what? Need therapy?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, I think I do. I've been going for about 6 months now. It's hard, looking at yourself honestly, seeing all the things you did wrong." I didn't feel sorry for her. Not exactly, but I recognized something in her pain. The agony of realizing you've built your whole life on a foundation that was cracked from the start. "Why did you come here, Janet? Really? What do you want from me?" She took a deep breath. "I want to understand what I did to you, how it felt. I've replayed it so many times in my head, but I only ever saw it from my perspective. I need to see it from yours." So I told her everything. The phone calls, the ambushes, the folder full of fertility brochures, the birthday party humiliation, the intervention, the affidavit full of lies. I told her about the nights I couldn't sleep, the therapy I needed, the relationships I lost, the trust that was shattered. I told her about discovering Wendy, about realizing I'd been discarded and replaced before the ink was even dry on the divorce papers. I told her about rebuilding, about Elliot, about finding happiness on the other side of destruction. Through it all, she just listened, didn't interrupt, didn't defend herself. When I finished, she was crying openly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I knew it was bad, but I didn't let myself realize." That's the thing about what you did, Janet. You convinced yourself it was for Greg's good, that you were helping him, protecting him, but you weren't. You were just protecting your own fantasy of what his life should look like." She nodded slowly. "My therapist says I have control issues, that I never learned how to let go, that I built my identity around being a mother, and when my children grew up, I didn't know who I was anymore. So I tried to control their lives, their choices, their futures. That's probably true. It doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't." We sat in silence for a while. Finally, she stood up. "Thank you for listening. I know you didn't have to. I know you probably hate me. I don't hate you, Janet. I don't feel much of anything about you anymore. You're just someone from my past. Someone I had to survive." She flinched at that word. "Survive. I hope you find some peace," I said. I really do, but I can't give it to you. That's something you'll have to find yourself. She nodded. I know, I needed you to know that I see it now. What I did, how wrong I was. I can't undo it, but I see it. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. You're happy now? Yes. Good. That's good. She left. I stood in my living room for a long time after that, processing. When Elliot came home from his run, I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, just like I'd done with Janet. When I finished, he pulled me into a hug. Are you okay? Yeah, I think so. It was just weird, seeing her like that, broken. Do you think she's genuinely changed? I thought about it. I think she's trying to. Whether she'll succeed, I don't know. But at least she's trying. That's something. Yeah, that's something. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It's Janet. Thank you again for today. I found something in an old box that I think belongs to you. May I send it? I hesitated, then typed back, okay. 3 days later, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a small velvet jewelry box. I opened it. My grandmother's ring. The one my mother had given me when I got engaged. The one I'd thought was lost in the chaos of the divorce. There was a note tucked inside the box. I took this the night I came to your apartment with the divorce papers. I told myself I was holding on to it for Greg, that it should stay in the family, but it was never mine to take. It's yours, it always was. I'm sorry it took me so long to return it. Janet. I stared at the ring for a long time. She'd stolen it, kept it for years. Only returned it now that she was trying to rebuild herself. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, gratitude, relief. In the end, I just felt closure. I put the ring on my finger, it fit perfectly. Elliot noticed at dinner. That's new. Old, actually. Very old. It was my grandmother's. Beautiful. Where did you find it? It found me. He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. That's one of the things I love most about him. He knows when to ask questions and when to just let things be. 6 months after Janet's visit, I got one more message from her. I wanted you to know that I've apologized to Greg and Vivian, to Donald, to Amy. Not everyone has forgiven me. Most of them probably never will, but I'm at least doing the work. My therapist at that says I need to make amends for my own peace, not to expect anything in return. That's hard for someone like me who always kept score, but I'm learning.